Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about topic 3.2, the First Amendment's freedom of religion. In this lesson, you're going to learn about the two clauses of the First Amendment related to religion, and how the ongoing debate between the majority and minority religious views are represented through Supreme Court cases. So let's get started. In the First Amendment, there are 5 liberties that are outlined: religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Now, the way that I like to remember this is through the acronym RAPS, R-A-P-P-S. Religion, assembly, press, petition, speech. Just a quick way to remember it. Today we're going to be talking about specifically the freedom of religion. And there are 2 clauses in that First Amendment that relate directly to religion. The first is the Establishment Clause, which says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So why did they create this? Well, they wanted to prevent the establishment of a national religion. And you're like, well, that seems weird. Why would we do that? Well, up to this point, most countries had an established national religion. In fact, Great Britain had gone so far as the king decided that they were going to break away from the Catholic Church, and he made himself the head of the Church of England. Today, typically when we talk about cases dealing with the Establishment Clause, it's because the government cannot do things like sanction, recognize, favor, or disregard any religion. Typically, when we talk about the Establishment Clause, we're going to be talking about school prayer. The next clause that we talk about is the Free Exercise Clause, which says, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So what does this do? It prevents the government from stopping religious practices. Now, the government doesn't say that all religious practices are okay. Religious practices can be stopped if it poses a threat to public safety or the activity is illegal. And so let's look at something that actually dealt with that. When we talk about religion, we're always trying to balance the religious views of the majority with the free exercise of the religious minority. You're always having to balance that. One of the first cases that dealt with religion after the 14th Amendment was the case of Reynolds versus the United States. Now, this is not a required case, so keep that in mind. In this case, the Mormons brought a free exercise case to the Supreme Court over polygamy. They said this is one of our religious beliefs, and we believe that we should be allowed to do it. The Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to do that. And they said it's because it affected the public interest. We talked about that in our last topic, how that's going to be something that we're going to bring up again. In other words, while Congress could not outlaw belief in the correctness of polygamy, the court said Congress could outlaw the practice of it. This was in part, the court held, because marriage was a most important feature of social life. Here's a quote from what they said. Upon it, society may be said to be built. Marriage, while from its very nature a sacred obligation, is nevertheless in most civilized nations a civil contract, and usually regulated by law. Finally, the court concluded that people cannot excuse themselves from the law because of their religion. Here's another quote. Can a man excuse his illegal practices because of his religious belief? To permit this would be to make the professed doctrines of religious beliefs superior to the law of the land, and in effect to permit every citizen to become a law unto himself. Government could exist only in name under such circumstances. In 1890, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints officially rejected polygamy and then issued a statement dissolving any marriages forbidden by the law of the land. So you've heard this term before, separation of church and state. This is actually from a term that Thomas Jefferson used that called for a wall of separation between the church and the state. We really start to see religious cases brought to the court in the 1940s. And selective incorporation is really started to be pushed into the states at that time. So there are going to be two required court cases for this topic. The first is Engel versus Vitale, and this comes out of the state of New York. So what happened here is that the state actually said that every school in the morning had to announce a prayer over the loudspeaker of the intercom. Not every student had to say it, but every school had to have it. When it was brought to the Supreme Court said that it violated the Establishment Clause. And they said that school sponsorship of religious activities violates the Establishment Clause altogether. Now, this is 1962. About 9 years later, the court actually creates what's called the Lemon Test out of a case called Lemon versus Kurtzman. And this test is used by the lower courts to help determine whether the Establishment Clause is being violated. So there's three things that a law must have. It must have a secular purpose that neither endorses nor disapproves of religion. It must have an effect that neither advances nor prohibits religion, and it must avoid creating a relationship between religion and government that entangles either in the affairs of the other. If it fails any of those 3 points, any of those 3 tests, then it is violating the Establishment Clause. The next case that you must know for this topic is Wisconsin versus Yoder. And this has to do with whether students actually have to go to school or not. So in Wisconsin, public schools actually had attendance laws, and they said that public school is in the public interest. And the state said that you had to go until you were 16, and if you didn't go until you were 16, your parents were fined if you did not attend. Amish parents, however, argued that they needed to provide their children with practical vocational training instead of public school after 8th grade. And so to go to high school until they were 16 would actually interfere with their religious beliefs. The court sided with the Yoders on this and said that it was a violation of the Free Exercise Clause. Some contemporary religious issues, some things that we talk about when dealing with the freedom of religion. Public funding for religious institutions. Now, almost all laws have been struck down for this that provide funding to religious institutions. School vouchers, which help relieve the cost of tuition for people who send their kids to private schools. A case in Cleveland actually was upheld because it did not distinguish between private religious and non-religious schools. So what happened here is that the court said that yes, as long as the law gives the money directly to the parents can do whatever they want to with that voucher money. But if the law said to give the money to the school, then that would be public funding for religious institutions, and that is against precedent for the Supreme Court. Religion in public schools. So the court has ruled against student-led prayer at official public school events and required moments of silence. Banning prayer isn't popular in public opinion. So the court has ruled that even a student-led prayer at official public school events isn't okay, but that banning of prayer isn't popular. However, students can still operate extracurricular religious activities as long as no tax dollars are given to those activities and as long as it's not during school hours. Now, obviously, students can say private prayers, wear religious clothing, and discuss religion on their own. Another issue that has come up often in the last decade or so is religious symbols in public squares. And so is it okay to have Santa next to the courthouse or a Christmas tree? In the case of the County of Allegheny versus the ACLU, The court said that without context in the center of attention, it is seen as an endorsement of religion. So cities and towns have to be careful about where they put up religious symbols. In this lesson, you should have learned the two clauses of the First Amendment related to religion, and how the ongoing debate between majority and minority religious views are represented through Supreme Court cases. If there's anything you missed, please go back through now and watch anything that you need to. Then go ahead and answer the summarizing question in your notes so that you can get a stamp the next time we're in class. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Bye.